Well, last week we began the series Feel Free, and although we're talking about your money in church for 3 weeks, I said that the thing that we often forget when it comes to our financial resources is a funny verse in 1 Timothy chapter 6, which says that the reason why God provides you with everything, the reason why God provides you with wealth, the reason why God provides you with possessions, the reason why God provides you with things is so that you would enjoy them. Which means when you look at your financial situation, when you look at your money, when you look at your possessions, if the primary emotion you feel is not enjoyment, when you look at your financial situation, what's coming in and what's going out, if the primary word that rises to the top of your mind is not the word enjoyment, perhaps you're doing it wrong. And I know that sounds incredibly offensive, but the reality is for most of us, when we look at our financial world, it's stress, it's anxiety, it's worry, it's fear, and we're not handling it very well. So in this series, our goal is to get you to a place where when you think about your financial reality, the word you think about is enjoyment. The word you think about is satisfaction. The word you think about is thankful. So to get things started last week, I said that the key thing that's keeping us from enjoying our money is that we are not a people who are generous. As American people and as American Christians, we're not very good at generosity. We're okay at giving, but we're not good at generosity. See, generosity only happens in our lives. We can only release generosity not when we look at what we have, but when we look at what we are receiving. When we look at what we are receiving from God, it releases generosity into the world through our hearts. When we look at His grace, His mercy, His kindness, His forgiveness, His love, His blessing on our lives, as we receive those, we are to release generosity in the world. The problem is, God has an infinite supply of those things. See, too often we get in this scarcity mindset where we think God's going to run out, therefore we're going to run out. He's like, I've got an infinite supply. But no generosity is coming out of our lives. And the reason why is because our hearts get kinked up and His blessing cannot flow through them. And the illustration I used last week, if you were here, was the garden hose. I said now that it's almost summer, you have your garden hose outside and you turn on the spigot and the water starts flowing out and you grab it and you walk and it stops flowing and you turn around and you look and your hose is kinked up. That's exactly what happens in our lives. Our hearts get kinked up because God has so much to give us, but we're not releasing it. Which means that we don't have a giving problem. We have, as Americans, a receiving problem. So your homework for last week was to go home and say, where do I have kinks in my heart? Where do I have kinks in my heart that are keeping me from receiving everything that God has for me? For some of you, maybe there's sin and you're just sheltering it in your life. You're harboring it. You don't want to repent of it. It's a kink in your heart. God's grace is not flowing through you and being released as generosity. For some of you, you're trying to work hard to build your identity and you're not receiving the identity Jesus has for you. There's kinks in our heart that keep us from receiving, and it's when we do not receive, we cannot release generosity and change the world. Today, we're going to build on what we talked about last week, but before I do, what was funny last week is after church on Sunday afternoon, one of my kids walks in from outside. And somebody here knows the other half of the story. I don't know the other half of the story. Walks in from outside with 100 feet of kink-free garden hose, brand new. And he says, Dad, someone just gave this to me. And I said, who gave you 100 feet of hose, buddy? And he's like, I don't know. They just showed up. They had an orange car and they drove off. Yeah, I don't know who it was. And then he says, Dad, is that because of the sermon you preached this morning? Yes, someone knows we have pretty bad hoses, so he's trying to help us out. Yeah, that's because of the sermon this morning. And then without missing a beat, he said, well, next week, can you tell him how small our TV is? I said, I'll try. I don't think it'll work, but I'll let him know how small our TV is. So, you know, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Receiving is pretty nice. So whoever showed up with a good hose for me, thank you. I appreciate that. Today, what we want to do is talk a little bit more about the connection between what Jesus said and your money, namely that He gave you money for your enjoyment. Now, how many of you are old enough to know that you should not believe everything that you think? Okay. The rest of you, you'll figure it out sooner or later, trust me, because all of us think things, and that's fine. You can think anything you want. The problem is when we believe what we think. Some of you, you thought dating that guy was a good idea, all right? That's what you thought. Now, that's fine to think that, but the problem is you believed what you thought and you ended up dating that guy. Or maybe you thought that investing in that hot stock tip was a good idea. Or maybe you thought upgrading your house was a good idea. Or whatever it is, we all have things that we think. The problem is we believe too much of what we think. Today, I'm going to show you something that I think every single person in this room thinks. You don't necessarily all believe it. Most of us believe it to a greater or lesser degree. But I want to show you what all of us, I think it, you think it, we all think this when it comes to money. There is, we think, a connection between your money and your happiness. We think there's a connection between your money and your happiness in life, your satisfaction in life, your fulfillment in life. And here's what we think the connection is. We think that more money equals more happy. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because you've heard people say, money won't bring you happiness. And there's research that's been done that shows money won't make you happy. And your grandma says, money won't make you happy. And the preacher says, money won't make you happy. And then there's some people who won the lottery and they said, money didn't make us happy. And you hear all these messages that say, money won't make you happy, yet in the back of your mind you think to yourself, just try me. I'll sign up for the experiment. Yeah, I'll be the guinea pig. You can test this theory on me, and we'll see whether or not money can make me happy. Because even though everyone says money won't bring you happiness, we all think that more money in our lives equals more happy in our lives. There is a connection, we think, between money and happiness, and it all revolves around this word, more. As long as I have more, then happiness will be mine. Now, I don't know how much you believe it, but we all think it. Now, since you already think that, I want to ask a couple of clarifying questions to help you get a handle on this, because if you think this is important for you to figure out. The question is, how much more money do you need to be happy? I mean, if you think this to some degree, more money will make me happier, where does the happy kick in? Because if you are going to build your life around this belief or around this thought, I think you would be wise to figure out what exactly is the finish line you are running towards. Because you want to know how to get there, because you need to know exactly what your target is. So how much more money do you need to become more happy? There's an answer to the question. And in fact, I know the answer to the question. I know exactly how much you need to be happy. You ready for the answer? More than you currently have. This is always the answer to the question, how much more money do you need to be happy? I don't care how much or how little you have. If you believe the connection between money and happiness is more, the answer will always be more than you currently have. Now, what's interesting is there is a connection between money and happiness. We saw that last week in the Bible. The Bible says that God provides you with everything for your enjoyment. There should be a connection, and there is a connection between money and happy, between money and enjoyment, but it's not around the word more. That's where we get off track. In fact, you already know this is true because you know people who have more money than you, but they're not happy. And you know people who have more money than them, and they're not happy. And you know people who have less money than you, and they're happy. In fact, maybe you know people or you are people where you have so little money, you can't even afford, or they can't even afford to go on vacation. In fact, for them, vacation means sleeping in a tent on a ground for a week because that's what they can afford for vacation. And some of you are like, I work way too hard for my money to pretend I'm homeless for a week of vacation. That's all they can afford. But they're happy. And their family loves being together. And there's peace, and there's joy, and there's happiness because there is a connection between money and happiness. But it does not center around the word more. The connection between money and happiness has to do with this word, managed. The way you manage what you have is the connection between whether or not you will enjoy what you have. How well you manage what you have will be the thing that dictates whether or not you are happy with what you have. It has everything to do with management. It has everything to do with deciding once and for all, when it comes to your money, who's the boss? Who's boss? Who's calling the shots? Who's the master when it comes to your money? Now, what's interesting is Jesus taught this with such clarity. In fact, if you want to learn how to be happy with money, all you have to do is open up the 4 biographies of the life of Jesus. They're in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And if you read just the verses Jesus taught about money, he is so smart and he has so much insight when it comes to living lives of financial prosperity and lives that lead to financial happiness. And in one of these verses, he taught us in Luke 16 about this important aspect of knowing how to manage your money. Here's what he said. No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love, underline that word in your program, love the other, or you will be devoted, underline that word, devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Now, Jesus is not showing opposites here. He's not saying that the opposite of God is money. We think like evil or the devil or something like that. He's not showing opposites. Here's what he is saying. I'm God. I made everything you see, and I made you, and I have an infinite source of grace and blessing and providence for you. It's only reasonable to trust in me to provide. Jesus knew there is something you would want to trust more than God to provide. There's something you would want to trust more than God for security. And what is it? Money. Jesus says, I want you to know that you have value and identity and dignity. And the reason why you have those things is because I think you're worth me dying for. And he gave up his life on the cross to make you a child of God and to give you a new identity as a forgiven, redeemed child of God. But he knew there's something you would look to besides him to have identity and meaning and dignity in life. And what is it? It's money. Jesus knew that the number one rival in your heart to God is money. Now, when we see the word money here, that's not the best translation. It's the best translation, but it isn't. Because if you have an old like King James version of the Bible, you might remember that this word wasn't translated as money. Jesus said you cannot serve both God and mammon. We're like, I have no idea what that means. So we just changed it to money because it made more sense to us. The word really encompasses not just money, but the things you can buy with money. When I was an intern pastor, I had a guy tell me once, Jason, I don't love money. I just love the things that money can buy. Like, it's kind of implicated beneath the term, buddy. It's what you buy. So it's your money and it's your possessions. It's all your stuff and it's all your wealth. And Jesus said you cannot serve both God and money. You cannot love both God and money. To which we say, well, I don't love money. I mean, it's cute. I mean, we flirt, but I don't love money. That's a strong word. Well, what did Jesus mean when he said love? He clarified with that second word I had you underline. Let's go back. He said, you are devoted to one. He said, if you're devoted to one. What does devoted mean? It means you pursue. It means you chase. It means you've got your eye on. It means you desire. See, devoted to means I really want one of those. Devoted means I'm researching it on the internet again. Devoted means it's captured my imagination and my desire. Jesus said you cannot have your imagination captured by money and stuff and God at the same time. One has to be the master and one has to be the servant. Okay? Imagine that you go out in your backyard this afternoon and your neighbor is in the backyard and he's got a bar of gold in his hands and he's digging a hole furiously with a bar of gold and saying, I know you're down there somewhere. And you're like, man, what are you doing? He said, it's buried somewhere. There is a shovel buried in my yard and I'm going to find it. And you're like, dude, you've got it backwards. A shovel is a tool, a bar of gold is a treasure. You've already got the treasure, man. You've got it backwards. But Jesus knew that we would get this backwards. We would miss out on the fact that money is a tool and He is the treasure. God is our treasure. God is our salvation. God is our joy. Yet we would somehow try and use God as a tool to get to money as a treasure. And we would serve money. And this is true in your own life. In fact, here's what I want you to think about. I've got a couple questions, and this is a preacher setup, so I just want you to know up front, I'm setting you up. Here's the question. Has your desire, let's go to the next slide, has your desire for something ever caused you to do something stupid? Now, there's no comma here. I'm not calling you stupid. It caused you to do something stupid. Has your desire, has your desire for something ever caused you to do something stupid? And what's the answer to that question for all of us? Yes, of course it has. We've all done stupid things because you had a desire for something. Here's the second question. Has your desire for something ever caused you to do something that eroded your peace? Have you ever bought something and then as soon as you had to start paying for it, you're like, I shouldn't have bought that. I wonder if I can take it back. Have you ever done that? Come on. Have you ever done that? You're in church. Have you ever bought a pair of something you already had a perfectly good one in the closet? Have you ever bought something when you already had a perfectly acceptable working one? And then you're asking yourself, why am I working so hard? Why am I pouring so many hours of my life into something when I didn't really need it, or I thought I needed it and now I got it and now I find it doesn't bring me enjoyment. I'm not really happy with what I have. Why am I pouring so much of my life, so much of my energy, so much of my time, and so much of my worry and anxiety into acquiring something when all that something does is erode my peace? And if you were around on Easter Sunday, I said that anything that erodes your peace erodes your capacity for happiness, because anxiety and happiness do not exist side by side. And Jesus gave you blessings financially so that you would enjoy them, not be worried by them. So why do we do that? Why do we allow our desire for something to erode our peace? The answer is because it mastered you. You see, Jesus is smarter than you think. You have been mastered by your desire for money and possessions in your life. And he says, if you are being mastered by that, it means I cannot be your master. You already are a slave to something else. Now, I think there's three primary reasons why we do this in our lives. I've got three words to share with you about why this happens. The first word is this: discontentment. Discontentment. Discontentment is the condition in which you will never be fully and finally satisfied with whatever it is you already possess. Discontentment is the situation where I'm not happy with what it is that I have, so I want more. Now, the thing that fuels discontentment, by the way, the thing that raises that up in us is, honestly, it's awareness. Being aware that something exists can create and trigger the discontentment in our hearts. How many of you have ever been in the store and there's something that you didn't even know existed, and you went from being unaware of its existence to convincing yourself you need one in 15 seconds. How many of you, like me, have ever done that before, and all of a sudden it's in the shopping cart and you're on your way? Wow, I didn't even know that existed. I need that. Boom, going home with me. Why? Awareness triggered the discontentment in your heart. The problem we have in our day and age is this: we have incredible awareness of what exists. You get on Google, you can find anything and everything that someone has made and is for sale, and you didn't know half of it was out there. But as soon as you see it out there, discontentment comes to life. Now, discontentment has a partner in crime. It doesn't come alone, and here's its partner in crime. It's greed. It's greed. Now, greed is so hard to recognize in our own lives. If I ask you, are you greedy? Every single person in the room would say, no, I'm not greedy. Here's what greed is. Greed is when you assume that everything you have is for you to consume. It's when you assume that everything you have is for you to consume. It's for you to consume now or for you to save and consume later, but either way, it's all for you to consume. And you say, well, I know I'm not greedy then because I gave some money away. In fact, I know I'm a good person because I gave some money away. If you have ever thought to yourself, I know I'm generous because I gave some away, I have bad news for you. It means you're definitely greedy. Let me explain. Only someone who assumes that everything in my hands is for me to consume would think they're a good person because they gave some away. Only someone who assumes that it is rightfully mine to consume would think, oh, I'm such a generous person. I gave some of what is rightfully mine away. What if it's not yours to begin with? I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Here's the problem with greed and discontentment. Greed is an appetite that lives inside of you. Now, appetites, I've said this before, appetites are never fully and finally satisfied in your life. If you have an appetite for Twinkies, I don't know, maybe that's your thing, God bless you. If you have an appetite for Twinkies, the more Twinkies you eat doesn't mean your appetite and desire for Twinkies will go away. What will happen over time? You'll want more Twinkies. The more you eat, the more the appetite grows. And then a couple years ago, Twinkies closed. They went out of business, and you had a week of withdrawal symptoms and shaking. And then after you got through that week and there were no more Twinkies on the planet to eat, what happened? As you starved the appetite, what happened to the appetite? It went down. And then there was so much uproar for Twinkies, they came back, and what happened as soon as you had a Twinkie again? The appetite came right back. That's what happens with appetites. Greed is an appetite. The more you feed your greed, the bigger greed will become in your life. Greed is never satisfied by more. If greed were satisfied by more, America would be the land of financial contentment, satisfaction, peace, and generosity. Because we have more than anybody. But what do you see when you look around? Discontentment and more assumption that it's all for my consumption. And because of greed, when you finally run out of money, we don't stop spending, do we? That is so last century. What do we do when we run out of money because of greed and discontentment? You take on debt. You keep the party going. You keep acquiring more things. You just say, no problem. Here's what we have. Because of the tension that exists between your current level of dissatisfaction with what you have and the knowledge that there's something else out there to acquire, that tension is uncomfortable. You know the tension I'm talking about? I see this in my youngest every time there's a book fair. There's some, I don't know why they call them book fairs. They should really call them toy fairs because there's always a toy attached to the book, and they're not winning any medals for book writing, I'll tell you that. But every time he sees what he could have, he becomes aware of what exists, and he's aware that he doesn't have it, and he feels this tension. It comes to life inside of him. Some of you are there right now. Maybe it's with a car, maybe it's with a TV, whatever it is. There is something that you don't have that you want, and because you want it, there's a tension in your life. What we do in America is we say, you can resolve that tension today. And how do you resolve the tension? With debt. Here's the problem. That tension goes away. You have it now. Congratulations. That tension is gone. And what replaces it? A brand new tension. Now you owe money. And let me tell you something. I want something is a much more manageable tension than I owe something, isn't it? Some of you right now are in a place where you are paying off consumer debt and you hate it. You wish you could rewind and go back to the point in time where all you did was want something, but now you owe something and you are locked in. And if you're a Christian, this is bad enough for anybody, but if you're a Christian, it's worse. If you're a Christian and you are in debt, God sides with the creditor. He says Christians pay off their debts. Now, let's bring our three words all here again. Discontentment, greed, and debt. These typify the American approach to finances. Now, here's my question. Which of these three makes you happy? Which of these three leads to your enjoyment? One person got the answer. So why do we do this? Why do we allow ourselves to be dissatisfied with what we have? Why do we assume it's all for us to consume? Why do we go into debt to resolve the tension of wanting something when we know none of it leads to happiness? None of it leads to our enjoyment. When you go down this path, you will be mastered by money and possessions. When you go down the path of more, you will be mastered. So for the balance of our time, what I want to present to you is a way to move forward where you are the master and money is the servant. In fact, what I'm going to do with the balance of our time, I'm going to take everything that Jesus taught about money, and again, he was so smart when it comes to money. And I'm going to condense everything Jesus taught about money into 3 words so you can have a handle on it and you can take it home with you today. And no matter what your current relationship is with your finances, no matter how much you enjoy or how much you hate your current financial situation, you can take this home and start to do it. Here's our 3 words. And if you've been around here before, you've heard me say this before. Here's how you manage your money. Give, save, live. Give, save, live. Every time money comes your way, you give some away. You save some, and you choose to live on whatever is left over and not $1 more. Every time money comes your way, you say, money, I am not mastered by you. You are my servant, and to prove it, I am sending some of you away. Get out of here. I'm the boss. I'm in charge. See ya. Give some first. Here's what the Bible says about this. Look at Leviticus chapter 27. It says a tithe means 10%, the first 10% that comes in, a tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees. Underline this word in your program. Belongs to the Lord. Belongs to the Lord. Let's say that together. Belongs to the Lord. Again, belongs to the Lord. To whom does the first 10% belong? To the Lord. It is His. It is holy. That means it is set apart completely to the Lord. See, here's what Christians understand and believe. When you get paid, when money comes your way, you only earned 90% of it. God said, I'm giving you a 10% bonus. And the reason why I'm giving you this bonus is that I can let you live out your faith and trust in me and return it. You don't give 10% to the Lord. You just give it back. You return it. You say, God, you paid me extra. This 10%, it's actually yours. It belongs to the Lord. Why would God do that? Why would He say, whatever you make, I'm giving you a bonus 10% so you can return that to me? Our next verse shows us why. Deuteronomy 14. Be sure to set aside 1/10 of all that your fields produce each year so that, here's the result, here's why, so that you may learn to, what? Revere. So that you may learn to revere the Lord your God always. The reason why God says the first 10% belongs to me, I want you to return it to me, it's because in doing that, you learn to revere. You learn to worship. You learn to have reverence for Jesus. The reason why so many Christians in America have such a small view of God's glory, have so little reverence for His name, so little experience of His presence in our lives, is because we're not learning to revere the name of the Lord. And the reason or the way we revere, that we learn to revere the name of the Lord, is by returning the tithe to Him. That's what allows us to see His grace. That's what enables us to see His awe and His goodness and to revere Him and to worship Him. Jesus said that where your treasure is, that's where your heart follows. Wherever you put your money, your heart has a vested interest in it. As you put your money with God and His kingdom and what He wants to do in your generation, your heart is drawn towards God and what God wants to do in your generation. It is as you give your 10%, as you give a percentage to the Lord, you learn to revere His name. Now, last week, if you missed last week, you missed our definition of generosity, and this is important right now. Generosity is the calculated, designated, and elated emancipation of your money. Calculated as in, this is the percentage I'm giving away. This is the percentage I'm giving away. The question that comes up all the time is, do I still have to give away 10%? Problem, if it's have to, you're missing something out. You're not elated to be giving it away. The question is, how do I honor God? What percentage do I give away? Let me just say this. If you're a new Christian, let me back up. If you're not a Christian yet, don't worry about it. You're not a Christian yet. We just want you to know and receive what God has for you through Jesus Christ. We want you to receive God's forgiveness, His grace, His mercy, His love, and eternal life through Him. Jesus has all that for you. We just want you to receive that. For those of you who you've recently become a Christian, or maybe you grew up in church and you drifted away like so many of us did for so many years, and then recently you've come back and you're re-engaged, I totally get it that most Americans, we spend more than 100% of what we earn. I still don't get how that works, but it's what we do. We spend more than 100% of what we earn. It might not be possible to give away 10% of your income. Totally get that. But if you've been a Christian and engaged for more than a year and you are not taking deliberate steps towards giving 10% of your wealth away, I think you're disobeying Jesus. Simple as that. That's really what it comes down to. And to say, well, I can't afford to give away 10% to the Lord that really belongs to Him is like saying, I can't afford to trust God that He's going to provide for me. That's what you're saying. Generosity is the calculated, as in you choose the God-honoring percent, calculated, designated, as in you choose where it's going. Before it even comes in, you say, my money's going these places, and elated emancipation of your money. So you say, well, where does it go? And last week, Jason, you said that this isn't about give to the church. Busted. Preacher, you're busted, right? I haven't said give to the church. I said return it to the Lord. And when you return it to the Lord, that means you take that money and you invest it in what honors Jesus. Now, here's a simple guideline to help you figure out where you should designate the money you give away. Here's what it is. It's in your program. Let's fill in these blanks. Give from a grateful heart and give from a broken heart. Give from a grateful heart and give from a broken heart. Grateful heart. What ministries or charities have so enriched your life and your faith in Jesus that you're grateful for them? That's where you give. Maybe you have an adult child or a child in college, and they're off away at college, and in their college town, they found a church, and they are plugged in at that church, and their faith in Jesus is growing at that church. And as a parent, you are so grateful that your child is walking with Jesus during the college years. If you are grateful, you should give to that church, because goodness knows your college-age kid is not giving to that church, but you're grateful as a parent, you're going to give to that church. If you are grateful for Hope and what this church is all about, then yes, then you should give to Hope. If you're new to Hope, you're not grateful for Hope yet, you shouldn't give here. You're not off the hook. You still have to designate it somewhere, but you should give from a grateful heart. Who is responsible? Who is God using? How is God moving in your life to bless you and enrich your faith and relationship with Jesus? You give from a grateful heart. Second one, you give from a broken heart. When you look at our community, when you look at our country, when you look at our world, what isn't the way it should be, and when you see what that is, it grieves you. It breaks your heart. It speaks to you and says, this isn't the way it should be. These people need Jesus. These people need water. These people need shelter. I don't know what that is for you, but what breaks your heart? That's where you should give. The percentage designated or the calculated, and where it's going designated, you need to have a plan and you need to decide, before I get money, this is how much it goes, this is where it goes. That's how you honor the Lord. That's how you honor and obey Jesus. And you liberate yourself from the tyranny of money. You make it serve Jesus. And you serve Jesus. So, give from a grateful heart, give from a broken heart. That's give. Second one is save. After you decide how much you give, you decide before you get the money how much of it you save. Look at this verse from Proverbs chapter 21. It says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." What do the wise do? They store up. What do fools do? Gulp. Right? Which means, and I would never say this about you, just to be clear, this is not my words. These are the words of Solomon, who is the wisest man who ever lived. This is what he says about you. If you do not save, you are a fool, because trouble will come. A rainy day will come. It's going to happen. The car will break down. He says, save for the future. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. Go talk to a financial advisor. Go read some blogs. Go read some books. You figure out how much money you need to save. I just know you're a fool if you don't, and you're wise if you do. That's God's plan for your money. So the first thing you do is give. Second thing you do is save. And then you decide whatever's left after that, that's what I'm going to live on. That's how much I have. That's what I'm going to live on. Look at what this verse says from Proverbs 22. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is what? The borrower is slave to the lender. If you decide to live beyond your means of whatever's left over, you're not going to feel free. You are going to feel enslaved. That's the reality. That's the reality of our financial condition. So, you want to condense everything Jesus taught about money? Again, today's nuts and bolts. It's real simple. You give first, you save second, you live on whatever's left. You give first, you calculate and designate, you save second, and you live on whatever is left over. And if you do that, this is going to be the result. We'll wrap this up here. Giving yields joy. In your life, giving yields joy. And the reason why Jesus said it is more blessed to give than to receive, the reason why when you become a generous person, you will be a joyful person, is because you were made in the image of God. And God is generous. And you were designed to mimic your Father in heaven. You were designed to be a generous person. And when you are doing what you were created and designed to be, joy fills your heart. Giving yields joy. Saving yields peace. Money in the bank results in peace in your mind. Okay? It leads to peace of mind. It does. Money in the bank or under your mattress or wherever you store it, money in the bank leads to peace of mind. You will not be anxious about it. You will not be worried about it because now you have margin. Giving yields joy. Saving yields peace. Living on the rest yields freedom. If you decide, I'm gonna avoid that debt, I'm going to live on whatever's left over, you will be financially free. Now, if you're a parent and you did not do this right, teach your kids from your bad example what you wish you knew when you were their age so they can do it right the first time. If you're starting out in life and you don't have any kids yet, you get to do yours right the first time. You get to live a financially free life the first time. You get to live a life where you enjoy, and you have no idea how much anxiety and fear and worry can surround personal finances. You just need to ask some people. You can enjoy your financial life for life if you give first, save second, and live on whatever left over. And if you do that, you will not be mastered by money. You will be in control of your money, and you will serve Jesus, and you will feel free. Let me pray for you. Jesus, you are so wise when it comes to our finances. Our problem is we think we know how to enjoy money more, yet our experience confirms we don't know what we're talking about. So Jesus, give us the courage and the faith to trust you. I know that for so many people, the idea of giving first, saving second, and living within whatever is left over makes us feel panicked or worried. Jesus, help us trust you and see that this is the path that will lead us to freedom financially. You gave us this blessing so we would enjoy it. We dishonor you when it just worries us. So give us the wisdom to know what to do with this and give us the courage to do it. We ask it in your name. Amen.